Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our series of Cordillera Textiles webinar with our guest resource person today, Miss Carol Ann Apelado, who is based in Canada right now. Before we begin, we would like to announce that we have a website of the Cordillera Textile Project. Can you see that on the screen? Yeah, so this is our website that features the research of the Corditex publications. We also have archive webinars from our Corditex webinar series. Now, so you can access this from our website. We also have a Facebook page where we also announce activities, a series of webinars, and also activities of the Cordillera Textile Project. So we have the website and also the FB page. Like I said, you can check our series of webinars. If you have missed some sessions, it's all here at the website. So last month we had a webinar with Mr. Leonardo Carino, who talked about the male weavers of Mindanao, changing space and gender. So for this month of May, we have Carol Ann Apilado, who will talk about weaving in diaspora, reconnecting roots with Bangar weavers in La Union. So to introduce briefly, Miss Carol Ann is a graduate of interior design from the Humber College in Ontario, Canada. She has a very extensive experience on exhibitions, also attended a lot of weaving workshops, for her professional development. We also have her at the Corditex as our resident weaver who learned with us on backstrap loom weaving and also did some work in our digital loom weaving. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Carol Ann Apilado for her talk on weaving in diaspora, reconnecting roots with Bangar weavers in La Union. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Iken. Naimbag nabigat, naimbag narabii. Good morning, good evening if you're in Toronto or North America like me. Thank you, Prof. Iken and Corditex for having me. I watched a couple Corditex webinars in the past to learn more about Filipino textile practices, so I feel very honored to be here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for my presentation. It's been almost 2 months now since I've been back from a 2-month trip in the Philippines where I connected with weavers and did an artist residency. It's been a lot to process, and I think I'm still processing, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to process all of that through this presentation, Weaving in Diaspora, Reconnecting Roots with Bangar Weavers in La Union. Okay, here's a quick outline of what I'll be covering today. I'll have a short introduction about myself and my creative background, the kusikus pattern and how it all started, how I actually started weaving, select works and my weaving practice, connecting with weavers in the Philippines, and finally, the UCAS exhibition. And everyone meet Kusiko, my cat. Thought I would add some photos of her with me at the loom for moral support and good luck. Okay, I was born in Norway, and when I was about 2.5 years old, my parents moved to Canada. I grew up in a suburb called Brampton and later on moved to Toronto in my early 20s, shortly after receiving my degree in interior design. In the beginning of my creative practice, I painted a lot of murals, and as you can see in the bottom 2 murals, my weaving practice is now reflected in recent designs. Those two murals are both done in collaboration with my friend Caitlin Tagibao, who also has Ilocano lineage or blood. The mural on the left includes like a warped kusikus design, and on the right we painted a river design on the bottom, and along the top of the mural we included Ilocano motifs that you can find in textiles such as sinan kapi or crab, caballo or horse, and bayabas or guava designs. During my mural period, I also worked in set design, doing technical CAD or computer-aided drawings and graphic design work for various projects like TV broadcasting sets, pop-up shops, public art installations, and fashion shows. But by 2018, I was basically burned out and uncertain about my career and future. And so around that time, I came across a photo that my friend Kristen had posted on social media. It was a photo of the Kusikus pattern. For her caption, she wrote it was a pattern from the Ilocos region, and it was used for protection and disorienting spirits. A textile that could protect and ward off evil spirits resonated strongly at that point in my life. I also felt connected to the fact that the textile comes from the same region my family is from. So shortly after, I went to a shop here in Toronto and I purchased a Kusikus rug. For those unfamiliar with the Kusikus pattern, the word Kusikus means whirlpool in Ilocano. It's traditionally woven by the Itneg and Ilocanos in northern Philippines. Kusikus falls under binakol designs, which also includes designs such as fans, windows, and cat's paw. So sometime after purchasing the rug, I showed my papa the textile and he looked at me and nonchalantly said, "Oh, you're interested in weaving? Did you know that your Lola comes from a family of weavers?" And I was just like, Papa, how am I supposed to know if you don't tell me these things? So that was the moment I learned about my Lola and her siblings and my great grandmother being weavers from Bangar, which is one of the major weaving towns in the Ilocos region in the Philippines. The photo on the left is an image of my Lola in the 1950s, somewhere in Benguet or the Cordillera region, where she worked for many years as a geography school teacher. In the photo, she's wearing traditional Ibaloy clothing and a hand-woven back basket with a headband. When I learned this information about my family, something just clicked. That uncertainty that I had when I was burnt out and felt lost kind of went away. It may sound kind of cliche or romantic, but weaving just made sense and gave me clarity of direction. I searched the internet and was able to find 2 workshops, a tea towel and a setup floor loom weaving workshop in Toronto, as well as a weaving plate shop that was organized by Kappa Collective with Cynthia Alberto from Weaving Hand, who's based in Brooklyn, New York. These images are from those workshops in 2019. It was important that weaving felt good and somewhat natural. And it was only through these introductory exploratory workshops that I was able to know if weaving was for me. In the spring, I eventually quit my job in 2019. It was risky, but it was one of those things where it no longer aligned with me. I needed something different or some kind of break. So while I recovered from the burnout and stress, I continued to obsess over the Kusikus pattern. I drew it digitally, manually, counted and measured the blocks of the rug that I had purchased. I 3D modeled it. I doodled it, painted, printed, beaded it, and it was all that I could do, especially once the pandemic hit the following year. I could no longer sign up for floor loom weaving workshops. And if there are any weavers or aspiring weavers here, you know that practicing is key and you need to repeat the process over and over several times before it actually sticks. So basically, without practice, whatever I learned in 2019 at the weaving workshops was forgotten. At the end of 2021, there was still a bit of uncertainty about the pandemic and how long lockdowns and restrictions would last. I needed to figure out weaving and I didn't want to make any more excuses. So I searched for floor looms on an online marketplace, and coincidentally, someone in my neighborhood was selling her floor loom. So before the new year, I had the loom in my apartment, and then after the new year, I assembled it, but I wasn't sure where to start. But at the right time, I came across a weaver named Sofia de Jesus Abella on Instagram, who generously shared her weaving draft of a monk's belt kusikus design that she was weaving. And now I had a design, but what about setting up the loom? By that time, I had forgotten how to set up the loom, but thanks to YouTube University, I found setup tutorials by a weaver named Bree Legan. The photo on the right shows my several attempts at weaving the monk's belt pattern. In this case, my treadling or my tie-up was wrong and my tension was too much, so the threads kept on breaking. I cried a lot during this process, I think because it felt very lonely at the time. I didn't know any weavers. I couldn't get mentorship, or I didn't know where to find mentorship. And I was sad that I couldn't just go back to the Philippines to learn from weavers in Bangar. But I had to keep going. And since that time, I've learned how to get better through lots of practice and by making a lot of mistakes. The next few slides are samples of me practicing and exploring. I would experiment using different colors or using different thicknesses, using the same designer setup on the loop to see what effect that would have, like the example on the right. And here I wanted to play with color combinations. And because of my mural practice, where I can easily fade or paint gradients, I wanted to explore blending colors the same way, but with yarn. So I knew that the monk's belt pattern in the previous slide wasn't the same structure as the kusikus rug I had from the Philippines. So I went to Catherine, the weaver I bought my floor loom from, and showed her the rug, asking if she had any idea how to weave it. She said she didn't know, but she did know that the weaving structure is called warp-faced or rep weave. So I went home with that information and started researching that weaving structure. And because I like technology and apps that help make my life easier, I downloaded an app called I Weave It, where you can design and preview what you'll weave. I plotted a design from a pattern book I have called The Hand Weaver's Pattern Directory by Ann Dixon, and I modified it so it looked more like the Kusikus design. These are images of my first attempts at weaving that sample. With every attempt, I made small adjustments here and there and finally reached a point where I was happy and felt like it was close enough to what weavers weave in the Philippines. Later on, I was asked by someone who I met through Facebook if I could help with a project and basically reverse engineer a sample from Abra, Philippines. I love a challenge, so I said yes and started my research. I looked at the warp and weft yarns in the sample, analyzing the colors and thicknesses. I measured and counted literally every warp yarn, making notes, and eventually plotted it in the iWeave It app. And you can see in the right image at the bottom, it says that the textile has 1,364 warp. After drafting, the next step was setting up and threading all 1,364 warp. And after about a month working on and off on the project, this was the result. The top half was woven by me, and the bottom half, which I was trying to replicate as closely as I could, is woven by Teresita Ugayan from Peña Rubia Abra. But actually, I recently learned or found out the name of the weaver may not be accurate. So if anyone has any information about the weaver behind the sample, please kindly let me know. In 2023, I had a short but exciting opportunity to weave on a TC2 digital loom. I took a warped Kusiku's drawing I made a file that the loom could read, and wove time warp. The two images on the right show the actual hand woven at the top and the digital file with a detail on the bottom. I also wove a piece called Parallel Portal, which is an image I drew on Procreate. In the images on the right, my partner Francis wore and modeled the textile for me. This is something I wanted to explore more, but the facility that the TC2 loom that had the TC2 loom here in Toronto, unfortunately closed unexpectedly. In 2023, Greenhouse Theatre in Toronto asked me to be a part of a group exhibition, and these videos here show the process of my piece called Channel. In the first video, I'm warping about 14 yards of cotton on the warping mill. Then I chain it, slay the reed, and thread it, which is like programming. And for those who don't know, the jacquard loom from the 1800s, which uses interchangeable punch cards to create intricate designs, inspired the design of early computers. I don't know if I'm just a textile nerd now, but I think it's pretty cool that computers wouldn't exist without the weaving loom and fabric. These clips show the rest of the process, warping the back beam, lashing, tying treadles, and finally weaving. This is Channel, exhibited for the Parallel Portal Sacred Geometry exhibition that Greenhouse Theatre curated. For this work, I drew inspiration from a weaving cosmology of the Philippines, where the warp or the vertical threads symbolize the divine or celestial realm, and the weft or the horizontal threads represent the earthly and material. Weaving the warp in the weft, or the heavenly and the earthly, the weaver is seen as an intermediary and interpreter of the order of nature. So after learning about that worldview, I wanted to express this through Channel. And it made so much sense because through self-study and all of my counting, I learned that the Kusiku's pattern is in fact rooted in sacred geometry, specifically the golden ratio. When this dawned on me, I remember thinking, how beautiful is it that this pattern we find throughout nature is what creates this protective textile? And how beautiful is it that our ancestors or the weavers who came up with the pattern were so deeply in tune with nature and the universe, right? So back to Channel, each kusiku's eye or circle in the design was woven using the golden ratio. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, and so on until 144. And at the bottom of each panel, there's a stone from our local beach called Sunnyside Beach that act as grounding anchors. For the exhibition, visitors were welcome to touch gently and with care. They were invited to sit or stand mindfully within its center, to close their eyes, look up, and ask questions like, how do I feel? Am I present? And for me personally, when sitting under the handwoven panels, I see this installation as a way to connect with my ancestors or creator or divine source. And it also feels really safe and peaceful when you're sitting underneath. The following year, I was excited to have Channel exhibited again for an exhibition called The Love That Remains, which was curated by Samantha Lance. I included a cushion this time that my mom and I made from scratch. The exhibition included the work of two other artists, Parnair and Julie Gladstone, whose textile work also comments on recovering matrilineal histories and ancestral practices to reconnect with family, genealogies, and homelands. Samantha, the curator, also wanted to include this family heirloom ulas, or blanket, and the photograph of my Lola to tie it all together. And in the space where these three objects or these pieces were located, we also had the sounds of me weaving channel playing in the room. Okay, with the support from the Canada Council for the Arts, I was able to visit the Philippines to connect with weavers last year. Of course, I went to visit my Lola's hometown, Bangar. In the sign you see before entering, it reads, "Welcome to Bangar La Union, home of the world famous blankets." When I applied for the grant to visit the Philippines, it was really challenging to connect and confirm meeting weavers because a lot of folks in the Philippines simply don't always communicate using the same methods that are normal for us in Western societies, like through emails or social media and even schedules. There were a lot of unknowns before visiting the Philippines and even after landing, but I had to be open to that. For clarity, on my paternal Lola side, we no longer have family in Bangar because they all either moved out to places like San Fernando City, La Union, or Manila, or they passed away. But my mom's sister's husband is from Bangar, and his sister, Auntie Connie, really, really helped make this process in connecting with weavers much easier and smooth for me. When we arrived, she introduced me to Francisca Acosta, pictured on the left, and Manong Jefferson on the right, who is a carpenter and loom builder. Okay, so something I quickly learned when meeting weavers in Bangar specifically was that they are busy. Weaving is essentially commercialized there. They don't really have time. Most of them work for other small or large businesses and they've got quotas to meet. So when you're there, you have to be mindful of their schedules. And honestly, I think it just takes time to gain each other's trust. Um, like relationships, they take time and you can't rush it. So it took a couple trips back and forth between San Fernando and Bangar to show them that, look, I'm not trying to take advantage of you. I respect you and the work that you do. I want to learn from you. I want to see how you do things and what life is really like. Because not only am I curious, but I actually care. But again, these kinds of relationships take time, intention, and commitment to keep going back. Okay, and in these photos, I was an artist in residence at Balay de Judge at Alfredo F. Tadiar Library in San Fernando City, La Union. And for my public presentation, I really wanted to facilitate a weaving workshop that was free for the local community. So I had commissioned Manong Jefferson to help build me a tilar or foot loom, and Auntie Jana helped assemble the loom, making sure it was ready for me to set up a project. Through this process, I was able to see how looms are built and all the parts of a traditional tilar. I found that the functions are essentially the same as my westernized European looms here in Toronto, but the tilars require more feeling. It's actually for me anyway, it's more challenging to weave on a tilar than my looms here. Another thing I quickly learned was that weavers in Bangar use polyester or polycotton yarn for their textiles, usually from China. And that's because it's easier to weave with, it's smoother, they say, and it's cheaper. Also, the yarn comes in large cones, usually in one size. So if weavers want thicker yarn, they have to double or triple it or multiply it as many times as they need to make it their desired thickness. Like in the photo on the right of Auntie Jana making a thicker kind of rope. Um, and when I saw that this is what they do to get different thicknesses of yarn, I realized in the West, we're really spoiled and lucky to be able to purchase tubes of 2/8 or 4/8, 16/8 sizes of yarn ready for us to use right away. On the left, Auntie Jana is um, preparing bobbins on plastic straws on a spinning wheel that Manong Jefferson built for me. Okay. After working with Auntie Jana and Manong Jefferson, I prepared for the weaving workshop. I went to San Juan, La Union to get some clay from my parents' friends who are potters. I dyed the cotton that I bought from Auntie Fering, a weaver from Poway who I met through Manong Bernard Guerrero from Oriental Weaves last year. I warped the yarn on a board Manong Jefferson built for me, and finally I set it up at the library. The whole process took me about 2 weeks. And here's a photo of the tilar at the library and the loom ready for the workshop. These are photos from the first workshop taken by JJ Buenaventura. I know this presentation is mainly about Bangar weaving, but through this trip, through weaving, I was able to connect with other creatives from La Union. I think when visiting a place, fostering these relationships are important in really understanding a people and a place beyond the surface and the superficial. Through many of the people who are pictured in the right photo, Anna, Samay, Angel, Leanne, Jules, Castle, Nino, and JJ, who's behind the camera, I've been able to learn more and more about fisher folk, farmers, land defenders, and the challenging realities local and indigenous communities face. I can only speak for myself, but as diaspora, we do hold a certain privilege, and I think the very least that we can do is to listen, learn, and bear witness to what's really happening. So if you're ever in La Union, the library and connecting with collectives like Dalikan and Leona Collective are great places to start. They've taught me and have shown me the struggles people face, but they've also showed me that there's hope through the work that they do. So after last year's transformative trip to the Philippines, I knew I had to find a way to keep going back. I didn't apply for any grants this time, but my papa, through the sale of my Lola's house, which I was really sad about, generously helped support this year's research trip to visit weavers in Bangar. In February, I came back for another Balida Judge residency. And prior to my trip, Neferti Tadiar, the director of the library, asked me if I wanted to help organize a weaving symposium and exhibition in addition to the weaving workshop. I was excited about all these plans and wasn't sure if we'd be able to pull it off, but miraculously, with the support of the library and the local community, we somehow made all of these events happen in a span of about 2 weeks. For the symposium, we had 3 speakers focusing on Northern Philippine weaving practices. We had Jolo Tavora speak about the history of the weaving industry in Bangar, La Union. We had Manong Bernard J.E. Guerreros to speak about Northern Lowland weaving and Magdalena Gamayo. And of course, we had Prof. Iken to lecture about backstrap to digital loom, digitizing traditional textile. And right after the symposium, we launched UCAS, or Unravel, the work and stories of Bangar weavers, which I'll talk about in the next slides. And about a week after, we invited Auntie Jana back to facilitate a well-attended workshop at the library where she taught us how to weave the sampaguita design that her mother taught her when she was 13. Okay. After my trip last year, I felt like I ran out of time. I had so many more questions I wanted to ask the weavers, but with more clarity and intention, the research and residency this year was the perfect opportunity to get to know some of these weavers on a deeper level. I wanted to know things like, what are the names of the weavers behind the textiles we buy at weaving businesses in Bangar, like Di Castro's or Lucina's? What are the names of those who taught those weavers? How old were they when they started? Are they compensated fairly and acknowledged for the work that they do? So I prepared consent forms, created a set of interview questions, all translated in Ilocano and English. I asked my auntie Connie from Bangar to help me by giving me a list of weavers who would be open to chatting with me. And over a span of 2 days, JJ and I interviewed and documented 7 weavers: Francisca Acosta, Rodora B. Dayacus, Lolita M. Eduarte, Flordelita Gileb, Lori May M. Gileb, Wilfreda Malama Rivera, and Victoria P. Vidal. One of the things I asked from the weavers were handwovens that they made that they would like to exhibit. But I unexpectedly learned that wasn't as easy as it sounds, because all except one of the weavers I spoke to didn't own or have any of their handwovens. Some didn't even own any handwoven products made by others in their, because it's inaccessible or unaffordable. Imagine not being able to afford what you make with your own hands. For most weavers in Bangar, I learned that whatever they weave belongs to the business. Even if they're working from home on their own tilar, it doesn't necessarily mean that what's on their loom is their property. Many work in a barter system where small or large businesses will pay for the materials, and whatever they weave is sold back to these businesses per piece at a price at a price that, in my opinion, isn't enough for the amount of labor that goes into weaving. To be clear, these are all my opinions based on my observations and what I've learned. I don't speak for or represent any of the weavers I'm mentioning in my presentation today. And yeah, so back to acquiring the textiles for the exhibition. In the end, it was easiest for everyone to figure out which towels or blankets they wove in the shops and purchase them from these businesses. Ideally for me, I would have preferred to pay the weavers directly, but it just wasn't possible at that time. I think that was a reminder for me that my way of thinking as a contemporary weaver artist is a very different reality for weavers who weave in Bangar. After completing the interviews, I had help from my mom, Jules, the librarian, and friends Nino and Iggy in translating parts of the interviews. For the exhibition, we had printed the curatorial statement, captions, and interview excerpts both in Ilocano and English. And for installation, I had a lot of help from JJ, Jules, Leanne, Jolo, Bryant, as well as artists from Dalikan Collective, Daryl, Dan, and Stuart. Here are some photos from the exhibition. Ukas in Ilocano is the word for unravel or to untie or undo in a gentle way. One of my intentions with this exhibition was to invite people to question, who are these weavers behind all the handloom items we purchase from the Philippines? What are their names? Where are they from? Who taught them? Who are they as people? And do we ever think about how maybe not knowing the answers to these questions may affect the longevity and future of this traditional craft? How can we honor and give proper recognition to these weavers and show them how valued they really are? Here are some photos of Manong Jefferson, Auntie Lita, another weaver from Bangar, and Auntie Jana checking out the exhibition. One thing that I really wanted but wasn't able to make happen was to have all the featured weavers attend the launch of the exhibition so that we could celebrate them. We even tried organizing a ride for them to visit the exhibition through Auntie Connie, but unfortunately, due to several reasons, most of them just couldn't make it. Some reasons included having other non-weaving jobs, childcare, and being unable to take time off work, despite offering compensation for their time. But I understand, and like I mentioned before, these relationships take time, and hopefully next time I return, if I have the opportunity to do this again, the weavers who couldn't make it will be able to come back and see their work being exhibited and appreciated by us. To wrap up my presentation, I wanted to share some of the photos we printed and exhibited. This is Francisca Acosta, also known as Auntie Jana. She is 58 years old, and her mother taught her how to weave when she was 13. In the interview, I asked her what she wanted people like me or those interested in weaving to do, like how can we help her or the weaving industry. And she said basically to keep buying products from Bangar because if there's no demand, then they won't have weaving jobs. And this is her holding one of the piece that was exhibited. This is Rodora B. Dayakus, aka Auntie Rhoda. She works at Dicastro Weaving. She is 59 years old, and her grandmother, Lola Filomena Blanco, taught her how to weave when she was 10. She doesn't actually weave anymore, but she kindly and happily, she looked really happy when she wove this piece specifically for us, for me. A lot of the interviews with the weavers were actually quite emotional, and this was one of the conversations where tears were shed. JJ, who was co-interviewing with me, asked her why she cried when thinking about her Lola, and she said she just missed her because she raised her and had a hard life, and she was sad that her Lola wasn't able to experience the fruit of her hardships. This is Lolita M. Eduarte, also known as Auntie Luling. She is 72 years old and was taught by her mother-in-law in 1970. She also works at Di Castro Weaving. This is a response to a question I had about younger generations in Bangar being interested in weaving. She basically said they're just always on their cell phones and um, they're lazy. She was really funny to talk to. This is Flordelita Gileb. I actually wasn't able to interview her completely because she was an unexpected featured artist in the exhibition. She's the mother of someone I actually did interview, who you'll see in the next slide. She's also known as Auntie Flori. She's 58 years old and was taught by her mother, Milagros Manzano Mori, at 28 years old. This is her daughter, Flori May M. Gileb. She's 20 years old and was taught by her mother, Flordelita Gileb, when she was 13. She's the youngest weaver at De Castro Weaving, and we have to confirm this, but she may possibly be the youngest weaver in Bangar right now. For the interview, I asked her what her dream was, and she just responded that she doesn't really have a dream for herself and that she just wanted to help her two children reach their dreams. And also, when I asked her if she wanted to travel anywhere in the world, she just said she misses Baguio. She wants to visit Baguio again. This is Wilfreda Malamo Rivera, aka Auntie Freda. She is 74 years old and was taught by her grandmother, Francisca Camarillo, when she was 10. She's one of the weavers who I interviewed who actually work from home and I think is essentially an independent weaver, which was hard to find at that time. Um, During the interview, I asked if she did other work aside from weaving, and like the other weavers, they do more than weaving. They also do things like washing or laundry. But Auntie Freda also worked as a DTI instructor, and she told us how she taught all over the Ilocos region. And she also told us how her Lola taught her how to weave kusikus and other binakol designs. Last but not least, this is Auntie Victoria P. Vidal. She's 55 years old, and the Lola of Auntie Rhoda, one of the featured weavers, taught her how to weave at 27 years old. She's the only weaver that I interviewed who actually isn't from Bangar. She's from Pangasinan, but her husband, who you see in the photos, Reynaldo Vidal, is from Bangar. I asked her if she had any message that she wanted to share with those who are interested in weaving. And her response was directly to the children. And she said she wants them to learn weaving because who's going to replace them when they get older and can no longer weave? I think, like Auntie Victoria, the other weavers also generally wanted this and hoped that the children or younger generations will keep it going in Bangar. And to conclude, just some quick points or things to consider or think about when we purchase Inabel from the Philippines. Ask what are their names? How can we give back in a good way? How can we support weavers directly? And this is for diaspora specifically. But what's ideal and works for us in westernized societies does not necessarily work for folks back home, and we just need to keep being mindful about that. And this is the end of my presentation. Nagyamanakmunay. Thank you for taking the time to be here for my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Caroline, for that very interesting recollect, if I may call, on the reconnecting your experience with the local weavers in Bangar, La Union. Okay, so we would like to ask our audience, we would like to acknowledge them. They are coming from different areas. Some from Canada and some from UP faculty. We also have some students, no, who are on our webinar. So if you have some questions, you can please type it down in our Q&A box, and then we'll try to respond to it after this. Okay, so we have a question from Professor Zenaida Bowanan from the College of Science. She missed the first part due to power failure, electricity failure in the campus. She said, "Thank you for the very interesting presentation. I missed some parts of your presentation because of the sudden power interruption. May I know what materials are being used in weaving in Bangar?"
Okay. So when I went to Bangar, I learned that the weavers use mainly polycotton or polyester threads that I believe is from China.
Okay, so these are sourced out from China. How much is the cost, and how do they buy this polycotton materials?
I'm actually not sure how much it costs, but they usually get the material from the businesses like Diaspora Weaving,
Mhm.
yeah, who just buy in bulk and sell it or barter with their weavers.
Okay, so is there an attempt to introduce natural cotton in Bangar, La Union?
I don't know. I think it would be ideal, but for me, I personally prefer to work only with natural material. But I think I think it's expensive, and I think right now, because it's such a commercialized industry, they just need to get the work done quick and ready for their clientele. So I don't know if the kind of material they use is a priority at all. I think right now the priority in the industry there is just weaving as much as they can and making as much money as they can.
Okay, so what kind of, so aside from blankets, they also weave all sorts of table napkins. Can you tell us about what they weave actually in Bangladesh?
Okay, they weave very functional items. So they weave a lot of tea towels and yes, blankets and beach towels and table runners that are actually woven in the warp-faced weaving structure I talked about. Um, and then they also take these textiles and sew purses and yeah, like tote bags and little wallets.
Okay, so all functional.
Mostly functional, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so we have a question here in our chat box. When you say things are different for folks back home, can you please expand on that? So we have
Okay,
a question from the audience.
so from my first trip last year, I had all these questions, and one of these questions were, okay, why can't weavers just have their own tilar or their own loom like I do and other weavers I know here do in the West, right? We just have our looms in our home and we just weave whatever we want and we can sell it at whatever price that we can sell it at. Um, and that makes us independent, right? I wondered, why do these weavers need to rely on these businesses? Um, and then when I visited again this time this year, I realized that's not always feasible. Like the TLARs for them are just expensive for them. And if they have money to buy a TLR, like they're not going to use that money to buy a TLR. They're going to use it to like pay for medication or for food or to help their kids go to college, right? So the priorities are just very different. And we just have to like understand and respect that we just live different lives, and like that's okay. And some of them I asked them if they wanted to have their own TLR or have their own business, and a lot of them actually don't want to have their own business because how would they be able to sell it on their own? Having relying on these businesses helps get the product out and they get money right away instead of trying to find a market or go to the market themselves to sell their products, which is hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because we know that Bangar is also, I don't know what level of municipality, no? So um you have the you showed us a photograph of welcome to Bangar, home of the beautiful blanket, sort of, no? So I think is there any government intervention in relation to the weaving industry in Bangar? Because we know there are, it's a cottage industry. Sometimes this big families have workshops and they sell this, and of course there are smaller, weavers around the neighborhood, etc. So is there like a government intervention by Bangar LGU or the local government unit in that area?
Um, I am also wondering the same thing, and this has come up in conversations when, talking to JJ about what we learned about from the weavers. And um, it is something we do intend to do, but we just ran out of time. But we do know that there is a Bangar Weaving Association who I would like to also connect with and get to know more about, and what initiatives they have to help and support weavers. Because yeah, honestly, I don't know enough yet, but it is on my list of things to learn about and find out.
Yeah, because we know you can also tap the Philippine Textiles Research Institute of the Department of Science and Technology, DOST. So they actually support local weavers. Maybe we can, talk to PTRI, send a proposal to help our local weavers in Bangar. They have done that in several weaving communities or already in different parts of the Philippines, and let's see, they can actually intervene. Okay.
That'd be great. Because I don't think a lot of weavers don't know. Um, I don't. Maybe they just don't know what kind of resources are available to them. Also.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another question here. Do you have any ideas on how to bridge the difference? Oh, this is already answered, right? The differences from East and West. Have we covered that already? Yes.
Um, Specifically about.
Uh, in terms of weaving, the patterns, the technique, probably.
Well, okay. So for Bangar specifically, I know it's different in other regions of the Philippines, but the main difference that I see or have seen is that weaving in Bangar is a job.
Mhm.
It's something they need to do to, I guess, survive and make a living. Whereas for me, um, I guess I get to be creative, and in a way, that's a very privileged thing. Here, I also learned that a lot of older weavers here, they all weave for leisure. It's for fun. Um, so yeah, I noticed that in the West, it's a very privileged, leisurely thing, whereas in the Philippines or in Bangar, it's um, a means of survival.
Okay. I'll just read this comment from Dr. Gaston Gipiten. He is the curator, director of the SLU Museum of Arts and Crafts in Baguio City. So he said, great presentation. Just pick up some ideas as to how our museum can support our local weavers. Thank you, sir. Okay, let's have the question from Professor Ruth Tindaan. Hi, Carol Ann. Thanks for sharing your weaving journey. Is there a demand for Bangar weaving or similar weave products in the Ilocano or Filipino diaspora, especially in your place in Canada?
Specifically here in Toronto, kind of. I think generally people know mostly about like the kusikus design, right? Um, but when it comes to other patterns like their plain weave or usig, which is are more, I guess, functional designs, I don't think people know them yet. I'm hoping that through my work I can, promote Bangar weaving more. And I don't know if I answered that question. What was I think I missed the first part.
Yeah, maybe in your place in Canada, like do they buy woven products from the Philippines? Are they do they like all of this, or is there a place where you can buy uh, these local fabrics from the Philippines?
No.
Mhm.
Um, Not that I know of. I think there are actually two online shops that may sell some hand weaving products, but usually they're already like wallets or tote bags. They're not just the plain yardage of the weaves.
Yeah, or Filipinos in diaspora, no, buying this.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
I think there is a big interest in the diaspora to buy handwoven products, but I think it's also very romanticized and um, I don't know. I feel kind of like that person who's popping their bubble and kind of showing that it's not all romantic and weavers, we love these reels that we see on social media, but do we know how much they're being compensated? And usually it's actually not that much. Um, it's not a livable wage, in my opinion. So.
Okay, before we go on to the next question about the Sampaguita pattern, what makes Bangar weaving distinct from other neighboring communities? No, so from La Union, you go to up to northern Luzon. There we have a lot of weavers from Bontoc, from Abra. From Kalinga, Ifugao, etc. No? So what makes this Bangar weaving distinct from other weaving communities?
Mm, I guess we have a loom, a tilar that is double width, that is wide, where you need two weavers to weave at the same time to weave a large blanket. So maybe that's one of the things that they're best known for or known for. Um, yeah, I
Is there
think.
like a specific pattern identified with the Bangar weaving? Is this because we are coming to this question on, do you have examples of the Sampaguita pattern? What's the full range of patterns you're aware of from Ilocos?
Okay. The Sampigita pattern. Let me try to pull up a picture of it. Um, but in Bangar, they weave things like the zigzag design. Maybe I can pull it. I'll pull back that slide. So these designs are very common in
Mhm.
Bangar. Um, I think when I asked them the meanings of things, a lot of them just kind of knew them for their basic name, like zigzag or zigzag signature or diamonds. And I think that has to do, like, not knowing the meaning, I think has to do with the commercialization of the weaving industry there. But yeah, with sig, which is the plain weave, the red and white stripe is very common. I'm just looking for the Sampaguita design. One second. Where is it? Hmm. Sorry, I should have included that.
Yeah, we can show it maybe later because there's another follow-up question from Professor Tindaan.
Mhm.
Yeah, she would like to follow up. Do the Ilocanos in the diaspora in Canada, such as yourself and your relatives or community, use Ilocano material culture, such as the Bangar weave products, in your identity formation, community reconnecting activities?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again?
So her question is, do the Ilocanos in the diaspora in Canada, such as yourself and your relatives or community, use Ilocano material culture such as the Bangar weave products in your identity formation, community reconnecting activities?
Um, I do. Like I use them. I mean, actually, I don't know. I'm not really sure. My parents don't, for example, don't necessarily use the Ilocano blankets that we have in the home. Um, I think there's a big, I don't know. I think there's a want and need to connect, but it's very difficult, I think, when there's just a lot of disconnection. And I'm not, I think there's several reasons why, but um, personally, I try to, and I'm still learning these patterns. Um,
Yeah, so still in the process of reconnecting,
mhm.
rediscovery. So it's the start. I mean,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
respond to Professor Tindaan's question about this use of material culture in the everyday.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is just the beginning. Um, yeah.
so there's more questions here. I'll read it out from Monica Batak. Okay, she missed the 25 minutes, but she said, uh, Carol Ann, I connect your critical reflections on your practices, understandings, expectations, and assumptions as an artist in diaspora with concerns of global capitalism. I would like to hear more about your current thoughts on the possibilities of politicizing other diasporic artists and creatives to understand these artists' lives and conditions over time through relationship, etc.
Yeah, I mean, when I do weaving workshops or when I share my work, all of that, all of that stuff comes up in conversation. So that's currently how I'm approaching that, in addressing the certain realities that weavers face in the Philippines or in Bangar. Um, did that, I hope that answers the
Yeah.
question.
Okay, so we have on the screen is this
The
is the
Sampagita.
Sampagita design. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us more about this design? Would you say that this is distinct from a very distinct Bangar weaving pattern, or is it shared by the Ilocos or other neighboring communities?
I don't know. I don't this is just a design. So when I asked Auntie Jana if she could facilitate a weaving workshop, I asked her what her favorite design was. and she said the Sampaguita design because it was what her mother first taught her when she learned at the age of 13. Um, and this is just what she set up for us. I think, oh, this is not available in Bangar at the moment, as I could see in the places like Di Castro's. Um, and I don't know why. I think they just try to meet the demands or the wants of the clients. I don't know how much room there is to suggest a certain design. Um,
Yeah, I think I saw this one in the in the vegan market. So I think I have one of these blankets, no, woven by Ilocano weavers and sold at the vegan market. No, so we're not we're not sure of the provenance if this were woven in Bangar or sold there in the vegan market, or is it the Ilocano weavers weaving the same pattern and sold at the vegan market. No, so in weaving, uh, maybe through trade or intermarriage or even migration, no, they also share certain designs, no, overlapping designs, maybe through time. But of course we need to do further research, no, about this particular pattern. Okay, so we have a follow-up question again from Monica Batak. This is in follow-up with Professor Tindaan's question. She said, just to comment on some of the questions posed, as a Filipino Canadian scholar, I would tentatively say there is not a lot of awareness about Philippine weaving traditions among the general Filipino Canadian population. Do you agree, Karen?
yeah, I
Yeah.
do agree. And actually, there's not many Ilocanos here in Toronto. Like most of the people who do workshops with me are not Ilocano. Um, yeah. So it's yeah, like Monica said, there is not too much awareness at the moment,
Mhm.
but I'm hoping to change that.
Yeah, so I know another textile scholar based in Canada, Professor Lynn Milgram, also worked on textiles from Ifugao, and also she has worked on archival research, no, on textiles from different museums, no, so we can also look at that work. And also Team Manalo is also another diasporic Filipino working on weaving in general, no. So yeah,
Mhm.
I hope we can influence our creatives and artisans, no, in Canada to look into Philippine weaving as well. So who knows, we might bring an exhibition of on Philippine textiles in the future, no? So that's in the works, no, for Canada. We'll see
Mhm.
with the Corditex project. Okay.
Mhm.
So we have here another question. In what ways can the diaspora of Bangar weavers help reconnect and strengthen the tradition of weaving in their community? In what ways can the diaspora of Bangar weavers help reconnect and strengthen the tradition of weaving in their community?
Um, I think right now I understand why the youth or the younger generation is not interested in weaving in Bangar. I think it's because, they get paid so little for such hard work when they could just get higher education and do something like computer science or something, for example, where they could get paid more. Um, and it weaving is very um, it's a lot of work. It's a long process, and not everyone has the patience. But I think that if weavers were compensated more fairly and given a proper daily wage, then maybe there would be more interest. But right now, I understand why there's no like motivation for the younger generation to
Yeah,
continue.
is there like in La Union, is there like a curriculum where they include weaving in the senior high or in the universities? Would you know? Or we haven't reached that point yet?
Not yet. I haven't reached that point yet. But
Okay.
I think in Bangar, when I asked Amanang, I think she did say that they do teach or show them in school. Um, so I think they are exposed to weaving,
Mhm.
yeah, in Bangar.
Yeah. Okay, so another question from Rosie and Hilario. So this is a really very interesting and inspiring discussion. I know that you talked about your weaving journey, but I just want to ask, as an Ilocana weaver in Canada, and since we're talking about weaving in diaspora, how are your Ilocana slash Filipina and Canadian cultures both represented and reflected in the artworks that you make?
Um, I think the fact that I guess because I'm in Canada, I think my work is contemporary because of the tools and the methods I use and how experimental I think my work is. Um, that's how I blend it. But I think, yeah, it's my work for me is rooted in the tradition, just different, inspired by it, I guess. Um, did I answer your question, Rosie? I don't know. Um, but
Okay.
yeah, I think just being a contemporary artist who's able to explore. Um, but in terms of Canadian, I do have a project in mind where I do want to express more of my story as someone from the diaspora, kind of taking in my surroundings here in Toronto, on these lands. But that will be in the future. It's hard to explain. I don't want to share too much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's a question from Jamie Cardenas. Uh, said, great job on the presentation. Knowing what you know now is wanting to know Inabel motif meanings considered a romanticization, or is it considered taboo to want to know the meanings?
I don't think it's considered taboo. I would love to learn more about the weaving. I think that's still part of the research. I think that the motifs say a lot about the stories and the environments that these weavers were in. Um, but I think that's like a whole research project that needs to be done that I would still like to learn more about. Um, yeah, I think it's important in learning more about our roots and where we come from. And also, I just want to point out that Jamie is also a weaver, but in Sacramento in California, who's Ilocano and is also learning how to weave or weaving the kusikus design.
Yeah, so also we want to share that in Corditex, we have been documenting the iconography of designs, no, motifs and patterns of um, textiles from the Cordillera. And it's best to document that because there's a lot of influences already coming in. And sometimes weavers would, forget the meanings, how it's made, etc. So it's best to document that on paper and return that to them, validate that with them as a record of that particular weaving tradition. No? And you can learn, the stories, the narratives behind, those patterns. Okay, so from John Maverick, my student, hello. So he said, I am interested in the male diasporic weavers who also do textile pieces, no? Not necessarily an exhibiting artist. Um, because gender is an interesting conversation when it comes to Philippine weaving, along with the challenge of preserving culture and heritage. No, that was our topic last webinar. No, the male weavers in Mindanao. So in this question, he's interested if there are male diasporic weavers who also do textile pieces.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Tim Manalo, he is a Filipino male weaver. Um, he's the only one I know. Actually, there is someone mm, in Germany. His
Mhm.
Instagram is Work of Hands, and he is a weaver. I think also Ilocano. I'm pretty sure he's also Ilocano, who is weaving not necessarily Ilocano designs, but he is weaving in diaspora. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
interesting, no? So, well, if you go to the Bangar weaving, of course, you see the role of men, no, in weaving as well. So they either prepare the loom. They also assist in the weaving, no. So maybe in the future, some scholars or like you or others can actually look into the role of men, no, in the weaving tradition of Bangar. No, that would be a good study also.
Mhm.
Okay, this is a comment to say, wow, that's beautiful work, no, from our anonymous attendee. Thank you. Okay, there's another question. An example I'd mention with regards to diaspora access to textiles, which I don't know how I feel about, would be a business like Nara Studio. There's a fair few similar businesses, but I don't know their practices with relation to paying the weavers. No, um, let's see. I don't. Are you familiar with the Nara Studio, Caroline?
Yes, yeah, I am familiar. But I also don't know too much about the relationship with the weavers. I know a lot of businesses work with, I think, is it Anthill?
Yeah, and Hill. There's a lot actually working with the local communities. But again, we don't know how they work with the communities, with the weavers. How much are the commissioned work, for instance, no? And the kind of arrangement in terms of the materials, the labor, and other arrangements, no exclusivity of designs, etc. So we don't know. That's still a very touchy topic that the Corditex would like to examine. No,
Mm.
we are also looking at the value chain, but that would still research in process. So that would be interesting to find out as well. Okay,
Yeah.
we have one comment, no, from Nika Kaplinger from Negros, or I don't know. She said, not a question, but the trajectory of weaving in North and South of Philippines has gone. Amazes me. I'm from Negros, and there was a point that the weaving traditions died down. But right now, I believe there's an NGO in Cabancalan, Ilog, who is helping the weavers out. Valladolid is also slowly coming back. No? So these are very good indicators that weaving is revived, no, in that area in Negros. But if I may speak for Northern Luzon, it has a very strong revival, no, of weaving tradition in the last 5 years. No, we also have in Kalinga. They included that in the senior high curriculum, no, to have the students take on weaving. And there's a lot in Ifugao, weaving workshops in Bontoc. Where else? In Kalinga, no? So in Abra also, there's a very strong revival of traditional handloom weaving. But unfortunately, they use polyester or polycotton threads, no? And Corditex is advocating for the return, no, to natural cotton, no, supposedly. But we found out that there's a difficulty in weaving cotton aside from being expensive, no. So we have communicated this to the PTRI, and I think the government is doing something about it, and so we'll see. Okay, so so I think it's already 11:25. We would like to thank our audience from all over the world, no, from US, from Canada, from Philippines, from Germany, who came to listen to this talk by Carol Ann. So, any last words or messages, Carol?
Um, no, thank you. Just thank you so much for having me. I was actually very nervous about
Oh, that's
presentation. But I hope that people, I don't know, learn from it. It's not the only way of doing things when connecting with weavers or artisans back home. It's just like the way I approached it. I just want to be clear that, there are other ways of connecting. This is just one way. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here and yeah,
Okay.
taking the time.
Uh, Thank you very much, everyone, for listening to our webinar. We thank Carol for taking time to share her weaving journey from Canada, from Bangar, then Baguio, no, which is the third leg of her trip to the Philippines. She also was with us at Corditex, now to share her knowledge as well. No, we did a collaboration for another project. So we look forward to Carol Ann's exploration of more weaving traditions in Bangar, and also to incorporate that to her professional work no, on weaving. So thank you very much. For next month, we also have another interesting speaker who would like to talk about her work on weaving and working with the communities. Also, we have a website. You can check out this recorded lecture in our Corditex website, also on our Facebook. We also have some publications about weaving. If you are interested, you can just go to our website. Okay, thank you very much, and see you next month for our next webinar. Okay, thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Carol.
Bye.